Today we're going to talk about Budweiser's sustainable journey and how innovation has been at the heart of brand growth, brand innovation, and driving brand perception. So to start with, I'll hand over to Timiko, who'll talk about how Budweiser's fitting into the ABI corporate strategy.
Hi, everyone. So Budweiser Brewing Group, UK and Ireland, is the UK name of AB InBev, the world's largest brewer. At AB InBev, our corporate purpose drives our success. We dream big to create a future with more cheers. A future with more cheers is a future where we have more to celebrate. So it's a more inclusive future. It's a more sustainable future. It's a future where more people come together. On to the next slide. So how does this come to life? Well, in the UK, this purpose is embedded at every step that our products make, from the British farms to the communities that we serve. So a way that we can summarize is we say, we take 100% natural ingredients, brew them sustainably, right here in the UK, to bring the nation its favorite beers and a future with more cheers. And yes, that does rhyme because it helps me remember it. So we take 100% natural ingredients. There's no chemical nasties in our beer. Most of them come from locally sourced ingredients. In fact, 100% of the barley comes from British farms. We brew them sustainably. 100% of the electricity for our entire portfolio comes from renewables. And Jessie's going to tell you a bit more about that in a minute. We also have taken out over 850 tons of plastic per annum from circulation. Right here in the UK, global brands, but locally brewed. We have 3 big breweries in the UK employing local people and sourcing from local suppliers. To bring the nation its favorite beers, we have the winning portfolio. People choose our beers not just because of the taste, but because of what they stand for. And then the future with more cheers. By 2026, we will be the #1 at-scale brewer to have net zero operations. This is a massive undertaking. It's hugely ambitious projects, in fact, a series of projects, but it will enable us to be the truly sustainable choice for consumers.
Thanks, Timiko. I'm Jessie, and I'm Marketing Manager for Budweiser in the UK and in Ireland. Now, we have this incredible corporate strategy, but we actually have a massive dream as a brand to turn this into a brand strategy. So we're going to show you how we did that now. We started, obviously, with our audience, the people who drink our beer. And we looked to what were they thinking. Climate change is the #1 concern for our audience, but the challenge is they feel very powerless to act in the face of climate change. And what you can see here is 76% of millennials believe climate change poses a serious risk to society. So we know what our audience is thinking, and we know this is incredibly important to them. So we decided as a brand to take bold action. We wanted to find a simple way to help consumers live more sustainably. So as Timiko mentioned, we committed to brewing every single Budweiser across the world with renewable electricity. And I can confirm that we have delivered against this commitment in the UK and Ireland already. In March last year, we committed and we delivered on brewing every bottle, every can, and every pint of Budweiser with energy from renewable sources. We even have a wind turbine in one of our breweries in Wales. But we didn't just want to do this with our beer. So what I'm going to share with you now is the longer-term strategy that we built. We started with our beer. We brewed everything with renewable electricity in order to really grow and build credibility within this space. But then what we wanted to do is move this and make this become even bigger by showing the impact it could have on consumers' lives. And then finally, how can we maximize this and actually start changing the world through renewable electricity? So on that big and bold note, I'm going to hand over to Pete to take you through how we brought this strategy to life.
Thanks very much. I think it's a really interesting point when people are looking at how to use sustainability as an ingredient for your brand to drive equity and perception. And I think it's the key part of it is looking at it over time. So first of all, it's about taking an action and making a commitment. I think far too many brands too quickly want to talk about something they haven't done yet. So I think it's a really interesting point to go, you've got to look within your business first to find out what are sustainability things are you doing that you can leverage. And it's an interesting point. Lots of bigger companies can be a little bit siloed. ABI is amazing because marketing and sustainability are talking to each other quite regularly. So you start with our beer. So that was, we're committing to brewing with renewable electricity in 2017. 2018, so a full year later, we did a B2B launch at Davos where we said we are going to launch the first consumer mark for renewables. And the key thing about that was another sort of feather in ABI's cap was it was open source. So a few other brands globally started to pick that symbol up because you've got to look at sustainability in its first instance as a team sport. I think if you try and own sustainability, even saying that phrase sounds ridiculous. So I think you have to look at it going, how can you involve other people in what you're doing that will amplify your brand? Because consumers, interestingly, are much more trusting if you're in a collective with other brands, because they feel much less likely you're trying to deliberately sell them something based on a sustainable commitment. So after we did that, we then looked at our lives. So how can we, once we've got the foundation, the interesting thing is then how can you catapult it into culture? How can you make it aware? And I think awareness, sometimes gets a bad reputation around sustainability and purpose, but it is really, really important because in 2019, by going quite public with it, and you'll see in 2020, the Budweiser, the Super Bowl ads, there was lots of communication around it. Not only did that raise the issue for a lot of people and think, actually, Budweiser, the biggest beer in the world, is taking this seriously, it must be important. Lots of other companies, Salesforce came and spoke to us, lots of other companies came around going, okay, you've set the benchmark here, and the awareness of it has meant we've got to catch up, including other brands like Heineken and all that. So I think that having a solid foundation and a solid awareness plan is really important, and you shouldn't be afraid to execute it once you've created your foundation based in, as Timiko said, really sustainable credentials and knowing what you're talking about. So we drove that sort of communication across. Then where we got really interesting is which I'll show you in a minute, is how do you go further? And I think the interesting thing about the journey is you learn more and more and more about the world you're living in. And ABI, again, always look consumer first. So what are consumers doing? What are consumers worried about? You have people in Holland, currently a recent report out around, worried around having children around climate change. People are feeling guilty about going out and enjoying certain things in certain venues because of the carbon footprint. So it's a very real problem. So I think people are looking at that going, how can you make these experiences for people guilt-free? And that is through innovation and through sustainability. So, for example, in Brazil, Budweiser powers Lollapalooza, which is a big music festival with 100% renewable electricity. So you're creating these guilt-free moments and interactions while increasing your brand equity. So what we looked at in this year is going, well, how about we expand it to make everywhere you drink a Budweiser is also powered with 100% renewable electricity? Because the insight that we found was 90% of the hospitality industry is still run on fossil fuels. So how do we as a company shift and help be that gap between a very big problem and a very real consumer need? How can you fill that gap in between the two? So we came up with this idea, which I'll show you a short video now, as ever, hopefully it plays. And this will explain far better than I can about what we were trying to do.
In 2017, we made a pledge.
So starting today, Budweiser
is going green
as it plans 100% renewable electricity generated from wind power.
In 2022, we stepped it up a gear. We saw that 90% of the hospitality industry was still running on non-renewables. But for most venues, switching to renewable energy is proving too expensive. So, as one of the world's largest purchasers of green energy, Budweiser took a bold step. For the first time in our 146-year history, the world's biggest beer began supplying renewable electricity. We set up the Budweiser Energy Collective. It has one goal: help every bar, venue, and stadium in the world that serves Bud be powered by renewable electricity. We start by ramping up our investments in local renewable energy providers. That helps us secure clean energy at hugely discounted rates. Venues that serve Bud can then join the collective. just like they join any energy provider. They get access to renewable energy at massively reduced tariffs. And the energy companies get more customers. Good for our partners, good for the planet. The collective launched on April 20th, 2022 in Brazil, Ireland, and the UK. To date, 5,000 bars have already signed up. And by 2025, we're on track to convert 250,000 venues, reducing CO2 emissions by an estimated 810,000 tons, and saving bars $30 million in energy costs, all by turning a beer brand into an energy collective.
It was fantastic as well. So it was recognized within the industry, and everybody loves an award around creative business transformation. And I think the interesting thing about this is we launched it in April, and already the amount of bars signing up are increasing. In Brazil, there's almost 1 million bars that are available to actually take this up. So we're now looking at training the sales force, looking at different aspects to try and really make this take traction. And I think as well what it does is it's suddenly a good B2B sales tool. So you have lots of unexpected benefits from this, and it's about committing in the early instance and not being afraid to take that step, and also when you communicate about it as well. Because if we go into the results, we're looking at, in the next couple of years, saving $30 million conservatively. 92% of consumers feel better about attending a renewable power bar. And as you saw in the film, 250,000 partners are on track, and that's the lowest estimate. And we're already removing a large part of that 810 tons of CO2 emissions prevented. So you can see how a sustainable platform executed over time can be a real brand equity and growth lever to pull. So I think that's sort of the learning from this. I'll just hand back to Jessie very briefly, because she can tell you about Ireland.
So one of the markets that we launched this initiative in was Ireland, and we are in the process of installing solar panels into 100 pubs across Ireland, which is no mean feat. So this film will help bring that to life for you now.
Just the whole atmosphere, being able to have your couple pints, listen to some music, and for it to be a renewable source, it's such a proud feeling.
Budweiser is bringing 100% renewable electricity to 100 Irish pubs.
One of the best things about Ireland is the Irish bar. Most people, they want to sit in the corner with their mates, have the crack. This is all about keeping Irish bars special by making them sustainable.
So to sum up, I think it's a perception piece around how you view sustainability, purpose in general, actually, around how do you move it from a responsibility to an opportunity. It's a cost to a cost saver, driving mental and driving physical availability, and moving from a campaign to ecosystems and innovation. So I think it's the word sustainability, I think, is often loaded and misused. All really, for us at sort of Revolt and working with ABI, sustainability is just shorthand for innovation. How can you do more with less? And that's a really powerful way to look at it, and I think a really interesting question and provocation for other brands and marketers out here today. So that's it. So questions?
Fantastic. I love this presentation. It's a good segue into a sustainable lunch as well. We've got quite a few questions, actually. What are the key insights that you've had from marketing sustainability? Is it a buzzword? How do you avoid it being a buzzword? What have been the key learnings when you've gone live with the campaign?
I think it was really important for us to be credible in sustainability before we communicated about it in any way. So that's why we first started with our product and making sure that it was brewed with renewable electricity before we started using it as a brand platform. Because a lot of brands do that. They use sustainability as a way to communicate and to connect with their consumers, and we didn't want to do that without being credible first.
Okay, cool. And how far do you think you can push this? You're obviously encouraging your pubs to go green, but would you ever see an environment where you would not supply them if they weren't green? How far could you push it?
Well, I think yes. I mean, it's, as Timiko said at the beginning, it's Budweiser's ambition to dream big. There is no, the only thing that's holding it back, strangely enough, is the infrastructure within countries. So how you get your energy and electricity and renewable infrastructure. But over the past 5 years, Budweiser's invested, or ABI rather, has invested 350 million into renewable infrastructure. So you start to look at that going, actually, there is no real limit, government aside, that you couldn't start supplying every bar, homes. You suddenly see going, actually, who are the people buying renewable electricity and creating the infrastructure? Then it's just a simple brand that you trust. So I think it is pretty limitless.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the UK, we have 3 solar farms, and we've just built and opened another one in Spain in the last couple months, actually. So.
Okay, interesting. And obviously, energy is an important, a significant part of your footprint, but not the only part of your footprint. What's the next big frontier to tackle after energy?
Well, I think you covered it at the start, didn't you, Timiko? We've got the big ambition. I actually can't remember the date.
Yeah, so it's 2026 for net zero. And the way that we're doing net zero is not to cast aspersions, but we're not buying carbon credits to get there. We are doing hundreds of projects to bring our energy usage down by 80% and cover the final 20 with renewables. And it's just, then we move on to scope 2 and 3, so that's our full supply chain. It's a massive job, and I think the key is working together. The key is looking for new technologies. We sponsor and we fund and mentor small businesses who innovate in that green sustainability area, and they are coming up with the technology to get us to net zero.
Cool.
And I think it was actually Larry Fink said the next 1,000 unicorns will be sustainably based innovative companies. So I think the other thing that we're sort of looking at as well is going, how can ABI and Budweiser help the next level of green entrepreneurs, and how can they look at sustainability, and how can you fund that? There's an amazing accelerator that you guys have. So I think it's that vision of sustainability is innovation, and they will be the companies of the future. So how can you be part of it is very important.
Brilliant. And obviously this has been a 5-year journey for you guys. You've invested tens of millions into it. For brands that are just getting started on this journey, what would be your advice to them?
That's a very good question. I actually wasn't here at the start of the journey, so I'll give it my best go. But I think have a big ambition that is achievable, and figure out milestones to get there, because that's what we've done as a business. I think we've kind of set increments. So first it was renewable electricity, but obviously our ultimate goal is to become carbon neutral, but we knew we couldn't do that overnight. So I think for us it's always about dreaming big as a company, and I'm sure other companies would mirror that, but I think it's setting those milestones that you can achieve to get you to the big goal.
Yeah, and I would just add, I would say, there's a lot of trends in sustainability, and you can get very caught up in those. But it's to be authentic, I think, look at what your touch points are. Look at where you as a business can make a difference. So, we are not supporting children's charities in Africa, for example. I mean, not that that isn't a great cause, but we look for ways that we can actually use our operations, our scope, our influence to maximize the positive impact.
Okay, fantastic. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. But thank you so much for an amazing presentation. Give it up for our panel.